is, how does this Kupas Midjan manifest? Again, for those that are online, we're doing Heichaltzu, the Hebrew English. It's called Lessons in Heichaltzu. We're on page 69. He explained before something which is really not just important, it's almost like essential. It's like a key point in the whole subject. And that is that sometimes a person has, unfortunately, sinas chinam. He has this klipa of midyan in him, but he thinks to himself, no, it's not, because I have a reason why I really feel this way towards this person. So the Maimer says, not necessarily is that true, which means it's not that the reason is the cause for your negative attitude. The negative attitude is because it's midyan, because of yeshus. In fact, the reason comes later. Now, the person doesn't necessarily feel that chronological order. First, I have sinas chinam. Good morning. And then 3 days later, I have a reason. It comes together. What he's saying is, what's the cause and what's the effect? The cause, it could be sinas chinam, and the reason is the end result, which is actually the reason is just a justification, and it's a way of me being justified for myself and for others why I'm doing what I'm doing. On the other hand, sometimes it's possible that it's a real reason. It's not sinas chinam. So how do I know? How could I know if I want to be honest with myself? What's really the basis for me having this kind of an attitude? Is it based on a reason, and then therefore I know that that's in some way legitimate and have to work on it? Or is it this klipa of midyan, of sinas chinam, which is so much worse, and I have to work on something different? So the answer is, I mean, this is similar to the famous Hayom Yom, the very famous Hayom Yom, which is the 23rd day of Sivan, where the Frierdiker Rebbe gives over what he heard from his father, Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab heard this from his father, the Rebbe Marash. And apparently they were talking about a certain subject, and then the Rebbe Rashab, after he walked out of his father's room, he said, now I discovered something new. I never knew there could be such a thing as a frum nefesh Bahamas. Not only frum, but a chassidish nefesh Bahamas. What does that mean? That really it's my nefesh Bahamas speaking to me. My nefesh Bahamas is pushing me in a certain direction, but he's wearing a garment and a cloak which makes it look as if it's coming from a place of Torah, mitzvahs, or even chassidishkeit. And the question is, if that's the case, then how could I know? How could I know where it's coming from? If there's a good Hasidic Torah reason to do what I'm doing, how can I know for myself? So over there, he says, the general test would be, what does it lead to? If it leads to something positive, that I'm moving forward, advancing in something positive, then usually it's from the nefesh elokis. But if it in any way affects me in a way that I stop, or I go down, or I withhold from doing something positive as a result of this thought process, it's usually my nefesh Bahamas. Like of course, the most classical example is when a person is very upset about something that they did wrong, very upset, and sometimes gets them to the point where they're depressed about it. So it looks like it's a nefesh elokis. Nefesh Bahamas wouldn't be concerned about doing something wrong. But at the end of the day, by being good morning, by feeling bad and feeling depressed, at the end of the day, I'm not motivated to do things. That's what happens as a result of depression. If that's the case, then surely it's not my nefesh elokis, it's my nefesh Bahamas. So this is the same thing here. We don't have a magnifying glass, but we can look into the depth of my soul to know, is this yeshus? Is this really coming from a place of yeshus? I have a good reason why. Like he said before, there are people arguing in a community who should be the Rav and who should be the Sheikhet and who should be the Gabbai in the Shul. And everyone is giving reasons. I think it's better for the community that this person be the Rav. And that's why I'm fighting so hard. And that's why I'm fighting so hard, because I think he should be the Rav. So it looks like it's all coming from a good place. So the answer is, we have to look at the outcome. And that's what he's going to go into in the next few chapters. What are we can call them like symptoms of Yeshus and Klipas Midyan. When you see this and this happening, then you know this is a symptom of Yeshus and Klipas and Midyan. So let's start now with tests. So on page 69, Vihine, first paragraph on the bottom. But this is also the reason this is the reason for this hate that doesn't have really a basis. He can't tolerate the other person. He's always looking at the other person with a bad eye. Bad eye means that everything about the other person, he has something to criticize, something negative to say. It's to the point that he despises and he looks in a bad way, even of the good qualities that the person possesses. He will negate and put down even the avodah, the good thing that the other person does, his kima mitzvahs shalai, and really that's a result of yeshus. In other words, if I hate him because he does this and that wrong, so that it should be limited. Why do I have this attitude that even the mitzvahs he does, and even the good things he does, should also be, put down and find fault in every single thing the other person does? Someone mentions something like, you heard what he did, and I'll put it down. I'll put a damper on it. I'll find a reason why it's not right or it's wrong. Or he really is not doing it for the right reasons. He's doing it for an ulterior motive. Is because it's coming from the wrong place. Again, he didn't do anything bad to him. He's not even thinking, not even planning to do something bad to him in any way. You don't have to worry that this person maybe has a plan to undermine me. There's nothing there that creates a separation between the two of them. That's why they're called your brothers. The word acheichem literally means brothers, but it also has the meaning of aches v'chibur. Aches v'chibur means, turn the page. I think I missed the line, right? I missed the line. Yeah. He's not intending to do anything bad. His heart can't connect to that person without reason. This is the meaning of the pasuk where it says, "Acheichem seinechem," your brothers that hate you. In other words, unfortunately, in a time where there's hate amongst brothers. When he says brothers, he's not talking about physical brothers, but the nation of Israel, they were all brothers. She'acheichem heinu seinechem. That your own brothers are the ones that are your enemies. The ach oloshem chibur, ach, the word ach, also has another definition that means connection. Even when they're connected, which means there's really no reason and there's really nothing in essence that is between them. And that's why they're called acheichem, loshen achiz v'chibur. Even when they are acheichem, means there's nothing there that is no wedge between them. They hate one another, belishum tam v'das, rak mepnei sheniyochal v'serv. They just can't tolerate him. So in other words, as a result of that, one thing he said, one symptom is the fact that I see that I'm even putting down the good. I have to be honest with examining myself. When someone points out, did you see what this person did? He went and this person who was sick, he went and he helped them and he did this and he did that, and they're going to say something to put it down. This person gave so much tzedakah for a certain cause, I'll put it down. When I see that I'm doing that, if I want to be honest with myself, I realize I'm putting down even the good that he does. That's because there's something else going on. Another thing. The other person is having it good. Baruch Hashem, his life is peaceful, and things are going well, it doesn't make him feel good. The feeling is, God forbid, if the other person is going to suffer, that'll make me feel good. At least he's not going to feel bad and not going to be pained by the fact that this person is suffering. But the real truth is that how this is so opposite of what the way a yid should really feel. In a certain sense, one should be feeling the pain for another. I should feel anguish and pain of another person's suffering more than my own. How's that? When a person thinks about themselves and they're suffering, and of course they're hurting, but nevertheless, a person is supposed to be thinking that if it's happening, probably Hashem is sending it. Obviously, Hashem is sending it to me. Maybe there's something that I did wrong, and because of that, I am now suffering, and I have to correct it. Like our sages say, if a person sees that there's something where they're suffering, he should look and search into his actions to see maybe there's something there that needs to be corrected. If he will search honestly and truthfully, not look to sort of justify himself, he'll find something. What if he can't find anything? He looks back, he can't find anything that he did that was so out of line. So the Gemara says, then he could sort of blame it on Bittul Torah. For a man, the hardest mitzvah to observe is Bittul Torah. What's Bittul Torah? It says in the Chumash, we say in the Shema, the Dibarta Bom, you should speak words of Torah. So the Gemara says, from this we learn that a man is obligated that every free moment he has should be for Torah study. Of course, he needs time to eat, he needs time to sleep, he needs time to take care of all other personal needs. He needs to go to work. So it means whenever there's free time, a man is obligated to use that time for Torah. What if he has a free time 5 minutes? If he has free time 5 minutes and doesn't use it for Torah, he violated that commandment. What if he had 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute? He still didn't, he violated because he had an extra minute that he could have learned Torah. So for man, that's one of the most almost impossible things to observe, that every free moment that I have, it has to be used for Torah study. So therefore, if a person looks around and says, I can't understand why is this happening to me, I'm looking back, I can't think of anything recently that I did that's so out of line. So they can blame it on that because that's something which is very hard to be sure that I fulfilled it in the right way. I remember once hearing a story about two, I'm not sure who it was, but two tzaddikim that were studying Torah together. And the way they used to study was day and night, nonstop. And they didn't just like stop and say, okay, I'm going to sleep. They studied until they fell asleep. You know, you probably remember from school when you were up at night studying, then you picked up your head and said, oh, what happened? This was 2 hours ago. You fall asleep. So one of the brothers, he was wearing a shtreimel. You know, the shtreimel is the fur hat that these Hasidim, other Hasidim wear. And he was falling asleep, and right before he fell asleep, he put it under his head, so he had something soft to put his head on. The other brother said to him, obviously you still have a little bit of consciousness to know that you should put that under your head. That should have been used for studying, so you wasted that moment. Of course, these are things that we can't even relate to. But, and of course, when people say, so what does that mean? I can't do this, I can't do that. No, we could do those things that we need to do for our sustenance, or things that we need to do so we can be relaxed and we can be healthy. And every person has their own needs. But it means once you finish with all that, there's free time. In America, there's an expression, come, let's kill time. Kill time. In Torah, time is considered a loss that's irreplaceable. Other things, when you lose money, you can replace it. Tomorrow you'll make back the money you lost today. But time, is irreplaceable. But you can blame it on that. And if a person realizes that what I'm suffering is for a reason and there's a purpose, it's because I did something, and this is a way of Hashem giving me a tikkun, a way of correcting whatever went wrong. Adar, he'll accept it with love, knowing that it's coming from Hashem, as that tikkun l'nafshay, and this is a tikkun for my soul. In fact, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, in Geras HaTshuva, those of you in the beginning of the year might remember it. The Alter Rebbe says, the Gemara says, that when a person goes through a little bit of suffering, the Gemara sometimes gives an example what does suffering mean. You put your hand in your pocket to take out change, and you realize it's in the other pocket. Okay, that should be the worst kind of suffering we should ever have. A little bit of suffering in this world will substitute a lot of suffering that the soul would have to go through in the other world. And he uses the example, which is an amazing example, that the sun, the Torah says clearly that the sun goes around the earth, not the other way around, or not any doubts. It's very clear. The sun goes around the earth. So when you see the shade on the wall moving 1 inch, how much did the sun move at that in order for this 1 inch to be changed? Thousands or millions of miles. Up there, it was millions of miles, and down here is just a little move. The Alter Rebbe says that's how a little movement of suffering in this world will take away millions of times as much in the other world. So the person looks at it and thinks to himself, so Hashem is, in a sense, giving me something in order to correct whatever went wrong. It's a process of cleansing. It's a process of healing. And this little bit is substituting what I might have had to go through on a bigger scale. That's when I think about myself. But when I look at another person, I have no right to make such kind of accounting about another person and say, oh, he's suffering, he deserves it because he did this, that, or the other thing. Who am I to judge that person? Person has to be thinking, when I look at another person, I should only see the good in the person. He shouldn't judge the other person in terms of his own experiences. He should look at the other person that he has better qualities than me, and I should always judge them in the kapschus. We know this is one of the things in Pirkei Avos, one of the major character traits that a person should acquire, is to judge every person favorably. And of course, this is a subject in itself. How can I judge somebody favorably? I myself saw him doing something really inappropriate. How can I judge him favorably? So there's a chapter in Tanya, which we had just not that long ago, chapter 30, where the Alter Rebbe explains that the reason why I can judge him favorably doesn't mean that I'm denying the fact that he did A, B, or C. It has to do with the fact that I don't know what this person went through, is going through, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and therefore I have no right in the world to judge that person. In fact, it's written in the Rambam. The Rambam writes, everyone knows that Hashem puts everything on a scale. He puts the good on one side, he puts the Averis on the other side, and they're both on the scale, and whichever side outweighs the other, that's the judgment. I have more good than bad and more bad than good. Then the Rambam adds, don't think that it's one for one mitzvah on one side, Aver on the other side. So there could be one mitzvah that outweighs thousands of Averis. And there could be one Avera that outweighs thousands of mitzvahs. And the only one who knows how to make this evaluation is Hashem himself. Nobody else knows. First of all, Hashem is the one who knows the true value of Torah and mitzvahs. Number two, it all depends on the person. Where's their background, where they're coming from, what they've gone through. Not only that, Hashem creates every soul different. We all have a different chemistry, physical, we all have different chemistry, spiritual, like it says in Tanya. Everyone has fire, earth, air, and water, energy, But the combination, everyone is different. So therefore, if you see somebody doing something wrong, which means it was challenging for them, and that's why they failed the test, but you have no idea how strong their Yetzer Hara was for what they did. Rambam in his halacha. The laws of tshuva, also something which we learned recently in the Rambam. We learned the laws of tshuva. So there's also a Gemara, a story in Gemara, which also illustrates this. Story in Gemara is that there was one of the greatest sages. He was really the greatest sage in his generation. His name was Rav Ashi, and he's the one who wrote the Gemara. That alone tells us who we're talking about. He's the one that put together the Gemara. He gathered together all the information of Torah that was accumulated over a few hundred years, and he chose and he made the decision what to put in and put together all the volumes of Gemara that we have. So one day he said to his students, tomorrow we'll have a class, we'll be learning about Menashe. Who was Menashe? Menashe was a king, and it's an interesting story because Menashe's father was also a king. His name was Chizkiyahu. And Chizkiyahu was such a great tzaddik that it says in Gemara, Hashem wanted to appoint him as Mashiach, because he was such a great tzaddik. And the generation really was deserving. But then there was some sort of a claim that came from the prosecuting angel, and because of that, it didn't happen. But we're talking about a tzaddik of such a scale. His son was Menashe, and Menashe was a king that he would kill people if they didn't worship Avodah Zarah. Try to imagine that. In fact, there's a story that he didn't even want to get married because he saw the future. He was a Navi, and he saw what kind of son he's going to have, so he didn't want to get married. And then the Navi told him, it's none of your business. You have to do what Hashem told you to do, and Hashem does what he has to do. He got married, and he had a child, and unfortunately, he became Menashe. So at the end of his life, he did tshuva. But this Menashe, this king came to him into a dream and said, you said to your students today that you're going to be teaching about Menashe. Is that how you refer to me? So disrespectful? You should have said King Menashe. It was a king. And if it's because of what I did, I worshipped idols and I made other people worship idols. So he said, I want you to know, if you would have been living in my generation, you would see idols, you would pick up the hem of your coat and you'd run to go worship the idols. Meaning what? The Gemara says that in that generation, the Yetzer Hara for idol worship was so powerful, was so intense that it's beyond our imagination. We don't have that kind of desire the way they had. And the Rebbe always adds that if it's in Gemara, it means it's true. The Gemara is saying that this person, who was the greatest sage of his generation, wrote the Gemara. Had he lived in that time, why? Because obviously it means he wasn't given the power to overcome that kind of Yetzer Hara because he didn't need it. And therefore, if he, with his weaker power, would have been in that generation, he would have unfortunately fell through. So we see that you can't know what's going on in other people's hearts and what they're going through, what kind of challenge. And you can't say, oh, he did this. You don't know. Had you been in his situation with that kind of Yetzer Hara, you probably would have failed also. Or I can even say to myself, there are other areas where I fail. Obviously, that's my strong Yetzer Hara. So why can't I understand that this person's Yetzer Hara in that area is like my Yetzer Hara in the areas where I'm weak? So therefore, I can't really say that that person deserves what they're getting. I have no right to say that. So I don't have any basis to think, oh, this is a cleansing. Who am I to say that he needs cleansing? We're on page 72. And therefore, he has to feel deep pain when the other person is suffering. Not only feel pain, but be vakesh rachmim olav. He should be turning to Hashem and asking Hashem for this person, that Hashem should bar him to the point that he should ask Hashem to have mercy on this person. And if he really knows truthfully. Someone told me a story that there was once a principal in the school, He was very upset at a certain student, and at the end he threw him out of the school. And it was very dramatic for the students. And people were telling him what was wrong. Right, he wanted to sort of know if what he did was right. He wanted to justify himself. He wanted to speak to some very big rabbi. So he told him a story. This boy for months has been making trouble, and finally decided, he's ruining the school, he's ruining other kids. I have to throw him out. So he said to him, his mother's name? He said, no, why would I know his mother's name? So he said, you mean all these months you didn't daven for him even once? That Hashem should give him the strength to be able to straighten out? In other words, if you really care about him, then how come you weren't davening that Hashem should help him, we should overcome this challenge? So if I really care about another person, I'll daven for the other person. And if I know be'emes, asher lo toivu, what if I know truthfully something really that he needs to correct? So then, yigala the meiser oznoi b'nei lebeinatzmei. The right way to do it is to talk to him privately, not in a way that you're embarrassing him in public. And you tell him that you should know this and this thing that you're doing is wrong. And they say, Yoshev alavai v'rachameu. So then he will return back to Hashem. But that's the way it should be. It's tired, but if God forbid the other person's suffering, and I don't feel that pain. Not only I don't feel the pain, that he's unhappy with it. That's a result that he hates him. He hates him for no reason. So this is, like I said before, one of the symptoms, and this is the test. Just like Begashmias, you want to know what are these symptoms about? Why is the person coughing, or why does the person have this rash, or why does the person have this headache? You take certain tests and say, if it comes out like this, it means this is what the problem is. Here too, this is a symptom that tells us what's really going on. If a person sees in himself, I just heard about this other person, I have a hard time with him, then I heard that he's suffering. Instead of feeling pain, I feel the opposite. Chas v'shalom. Number one, I don't feel the pain. That's already one thing. But to even feel almost like a little bit of a tinge of joy that they're suffering shows that it's sinas chinam. If this would be real feeling for a real reason, you would never go that far. There was a chassid in the times of the Rebbe Rashab. His name's Reb Hendel. So he was a very passionate chassid, passionate in davening, passionate. And he would daven or say Tillim. He would be on fire. And he was also known exceptionally for his Ahavas Yisrael. And the incident that actually, unfortunately, brought him to end his life was that there was a fire, and somebody that he knew, it was this person's house was on fire and everything burned. This was in those days, there was no fire insurance, didn't have all these things, which means he just lost his entire possession. He took it so much to heart that it literally made him sick, and then he passed away. I know you might be thinking, so how does that make sense? Why should a person pass away because of Ahavas Yisrael? I don't know the answer to how Hashem runs the world, but based on other things that are written, it could be the other way around. His time came. His time came. Hashem arranged, because his whole life was full of love for another Yid, that how did he leave this world, like he's left this world with the Ahavas Yisrael. Not that Chas v'Shalom, he was meant to live longer and the Ahavas Yisrael cut off his life. On the contrary, his time came to complete his avodah in this world. And because he was such a person, that's how it ended.
But you said he died because of his enemy's fire.
No. I'm showing what real Ahavas Yisrael is supposed to be. That he took it so much to heart that it affected his heart physically, and he passed away.
So a question. So when someone has hate for a real reason, let's say someone really wronged them, it's terrible to them, and they hate them for that. Then that person and the person that they hated suffered. Then we would.
I should still not.
Still feel bad.
I should feel bad.
But you're saying, but with baseless hate, that's how you know it's baseless.
Right.
You can feel bad for them.
Right. Right. That means there's something in you that you just can't stand that person. It's almost like you don't want them anything that will diminish their existence makes you feel better.
Right, so like a person who has a real enemy and they suffer from that, then generally they would sort of feel sorry for that person because if they were.
Right. And even if a person doesn't feel that way, or they can go out of the way and say a bracha for them, say a kapitel tefillah for them, because I know this is my Yetzer Hara. And the Alter Rebbe brings us also in Tanya that this was the greatness of Yosef. Yosef was sold by his brothers. And for so many years, he was separated from his father. And he suffered. He was in Mitzrayim, and he was in a pit and sold from one person to another group. And then he was as a slave in Egypt, and then he was thrown into a jail. All this because of the brothers. And yet when they came, after he finally, came to the point where he revealed himself, he went out of his way to help them and to do everything for them, make them and not feel bad. On the contrary, to help them in any way. And his reason was because he said everything that happened was from Hashem, and therefore, and Zohar said we should learn from that. That when someone hurts me, not only I shouldn't feel hate, but I should go to the other extreme and even try to do something for them. But again, I'm not talking about a situation where if I'm going to do a favor to the other person, they're going to say, "Oh, this guy is he's a real, good material to take advantage of. I did this, and he's helping me, so I'll hurt him even more." You don't have to go out of your way and make yourself more sort of vulnerable, Chas v'shalom. But in general, if it's a sincere thing, person should go out of his way. Definitely, if he can do something between him and Hashem, say Tillim for him, give tzedakah for him, and telling Hashem, even though he hurt me this and this way, I'm davening for him that he should be okay. Kitzer, this is the summary. Sinas chinam, which means baseless hate that we're talking about, is eina mishtata b'simchas chaverei. It manifests in the way that he doesn't participate in another person's sin. He doesn't feel the joy of another person. And one saw a sikh of the Friedrich Rebbe that true Ahavas Yisrael is also, as he described here, but in the positive. That sometimes there are people that when someone else has a simcha, they're happier for the person than more than the person's happy for themselves. How's that possible? It's just because sometimes there are people that are by nature more calm, cool, they're not such passionate people, not such excitable people. Something happened, oh, my daughter became a kalim, very nice, my son became a chassan, oh, I had a baby was born, I had a grandchild born, everything is like this. The other person is a passionate, excitable person. He ends up getting more excited for that person than the person is for himself. So that's the way it's supposed to be. And here, not only he doesn't feel the joy for the other person, and he doesn't even feel the pain for the other person's suffering. And the truth is, the Yisuri Atzmai, when he himself is suffering, Yochalim Tzeitam, he can find a reason, and that will help make the suffering a little bit lighter, realizing that through this, it's doing something which is cleansing and healing. But when it's his friend suffering, I should always look and find a way of judging him favorably. The next paragraph, which is Yud, is another example that he's going to give. But again, one of the really amazing things we see in this Maimer, when he goes into Yud, and then even the later paragraphs, how he's pointing out how even people who really are working on themselves, which means they work on self-refinement. In the language of Chassidus, it's called an oived. From the word avoda, they work on themselves to refine themselves. They're davening, they're learning, they spend time to refine their character traits. They might be fooling themselves and not even realizing that what they're doing is coming from a place of sinas chinam. So now he's going to give another example, another sort of manifestation of sinas chinam. Not only that, but if you look at the first words, it's pretty shocking. So this is Eis Yud. Page 74. V'hinei b'yoyse yemotze avei sinas chinam. This sin of sinas chinam is found especially among those who engage in divine service. Can you imagine? In other words, Dafka people who engage in serving Hashem, when he says divine service, it doesn't mean just daven and learn Torah. He considers the word avodah is referring to self-refinement, to become a more refined person. More refined in terms of my feelings for Hashem, love and fear of Hashem, and more refined in terms of being sensitive to others and being care about others and finding my midas. But he's saying, and more than anything else, it's by those people. And he's going to give an example of where we see here's a person who learns Torah, works on self-refinement, and yet he, without realizing it, could be possessing this klipa of sinas chinam. I always wondered when it came to this point, like, how is it possible that these people have it more than others? And I think the reason is because of the camouflage. Because they're so involved in avodah, so therefore it's easy for them. They think of themselves that, okay, I'm a refined person. I'm working on my self-refinement. So they think like the Yitzhar that comes, like you said before, dressed as a chassid. The Yitzhar has a way of convincing me that what I'm doing is because of spiritual purposes. In other words, someone who's not so involved in spiritual avodah sees things more black and white. And what I'm doing is, I just hate this person. It's wrong. But a person involved in spiritual avodah, it's very easy that I could camouflage and I could justify what I'm doing there because of Avodas Hashem. So he's going to give an example of how that manifests amongst people who learn Torah and do mitzvahs and actually work on self-refinement. I just wanted to share with you that today, for me, is personally, it's a special day on my calendar. What happened today in my calendar is something that happened 58 years ago. It was the funny 24th day of Adar, except that year there were two Adars. The Rebbe established a yeshiva in Melbourne, Australia. And I went with 6 students to go from New York to Australia. So I was one of them, Baruch Hashem. And the Rebbe basically called us into his room. He spoke to us about 20 minutes. It was a sikha about the shlichus. And then the Rebbe went out to see us off. The Rebbe actually said the whole yeshiva, all the Rosh Yeshivas, all the staff, all the faculty, everybody should go to the airport. And throughout we were there for 2 years, and the Rebbe always sent us letters, like every yontif, every once in a while there's another letter with brachas. Spoke about it by Fabrengen. It was a very special time. So that was today. I just thought for your, just interesting, this is a picture of us arriving in Australia, and if you can figure out who I am, I'll give you a challenge for this morning.
Tell a story about, are you?
About the fire? The fire?
That's what you were going to say.
No, that's not the fire.
Special days that you left that day.
We left to Australia that day, actually. Yes.
Oh, you left a car. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was summertime. That was Talmud. Yeah. It happened to be that in that car, 4 of us were from the group that came back from Australia. We came back 2 years later. That's when it happened. There was some connection there because the Rebbe had told us when we came back that for the next few months we should just sit and learn, not go to camp, not to go to other things. So we should have had brains, not even to go, because we went to a wedding in Boston. We shouldn't have gone there either. What?
You said not to go.
Yeah, he said for the next few months, being that when in Australia, we're more involved with teaching others, but now just spend the time learning yourself. No? Figured it out? On the other side, you see the Rebbe went out to see us off. That's the other picture. The guy with the hat.
The lunch on it.
Almost like bilingual classes. I don't.
It was 58 years ago, so it's a little bit different. I was the youngest in the group.
I think I was maybe. I was on.
Most of the boys were like close to 19. I was 18. And they were 19.